Hi, my name is Nan Cohen. I'm the producer of Light Television, and I want to welcome you to Part 5 of Rabbi Gerson Winkler's An Introduction to Judaism. He titles this talk, Ancient Jewish Teachings About Holy War, Terrorism, and Genocide. He writes, not unlike so many other religions, Judaism too has had its share of holy wars, terrorism, and even genocide, not only as victim, but also as perpetrator. What were the parameters around these actions and the attitudes toward them? When was it deemed okay to give up your life for God and when not to? What determined for the ancient Hebrews the legitimacy of a so-called holy war? How does Judaism reconcile its myriad teachings about love and compassion with its allowance for war, holy and otherwise? What were the laws of combatant behavior during war? What were the protocols for seeking peace with the enemy? Drawing from ancient Hebrew stories and teachings, Rabbi Gerson Winkler will address these and other related issues as he once again introduces us to surprising facts and wisdom culled from more than 5,000 years of oral and written Jewish traditions. And here's the rabbi.
This evening is not for anyone over 6 months old. Good evening, welcome to this thing tonight. Subject tonight is Judaism and sex. Right? Oh, okay. I thought I'd get away with it. It's a much easier topic, so. All right. I see this stuff here, and I just want to let you know, I see these flyers lying around, and you're welcome to come up and pick them up. Somebody left them here, I think Nan and Rick, because they do a lot of trouble in town. And this is one of their new trouble things. So it's a journey into understanding the human face of Afghanistan, Islam, and the Middle East. It's a multimedia presentation by Janet Cowles. How do you say her name? You don't even know when you put these flyers
I
in?
don't know her last name.
Oh, and Richard Wax of Alberton, Montana. The project of Missoula Friends Meeting, who are the Quakers. And anybody who wants to host this program, this multimedia program, can pick up a flyer and see Nan or Rick and Nan.
Very good.
And then you can make arrangements with them. Huh?
Or Dean.
Or you?
Yeah, it's very good. I'll endorse it.
See? Okay, he'll endorse it. There you go. See? All right. And tonight we open up our program with this little chant I want to do. I want to do you an ancient Jewish chant for you. Those of you who've heard this chant before, please do this. It's called it's the chant of the warrior, because tonight we're going to war. So it means in English, because I'll be doing it in the original Hebrew, it means something like, who's going to join with me against those who seek my harm? Who's going to rise up with me against those who want to wrestle with me? If it wasn't for the Infinite One to be my help in times like that, oh, my soul would be totally silenced. And even when my feet begin to falter, and I feel a little weak under the knees, your love, oh Infinite One, will give me the strength and support I need. I'm so full of turmoil. That's the final stanza. I'm so full of turmoil. That's why it's the final stanza. I'm so full of turmoil. Deep within me. But then I remember you, and you console me, and you bring my soul back into play. So I'm going to sing this for you in Hebrew. It's in the book of Psalms by King David, one of our great warring kings and lovers. Well, why don't you start? And I'll join you. In polio vendule Adonai Razali Ima chakna dumonafshi Imamati matarageli Imamate matarageli Chastecha Yisadeni Mamati Matarageli Mate Matarageli Chastecha Adonai Yisadeni Velo Sarapai Vekirvi Velo Sarapai Vekirvi Tanhumecha Yishashu Anafshi Hey, you either go all the way or you don't do it at all. Sounds like a golf game. You know? This weekend is the anniversary, 7th anniversary of the passing away of a great, great man. His name was Rabbi Shlomo Kalabach. Rabbi Shlomo was a very totally mad rabbi because he loved peace. He adopted the madness of this very ancient tradition, which I will share with you tonight. A tradition full of war and peace. A very schizophrenic tradition. Now, for example, Rabbi Shlomo, he used to go to Israel a lot. He has a community there to this day, although now more zealous than he ever was. That's usually what happens. And he would often go visit the prisons in Israel. And he would then ask the prison authorities, where are the Arabs? Where are you holding the Palestinians, the terrorists who were arrested? And they would bring him to, hesitatingly, why do you want to see them? They're the enemy. And he would insist, every time he came, he would insist on seeing the Palestinian in jail. And he would go to them, and he would play his guitar and sing to them. And he would demand, after a lot of effort, that the guards let them out into the courtyard, and he would dance with them. And then he asked at one time, the story goes, he asked the authority, the guard in charge, the captain of the guard, whatever, is this all of them? And he said, no, there is one woman in solitary. She's like the most dangerous of them all. And we finally got her. And she's in solitary. We can't let her join the rest of the population. And Shlomo says, I'm not leaving this prison until you bring her out here too. And so they brought out this woman who had been arrested for planting bombs and other things like that, good stuff. And they finally brought her out in chains, and he demanded that they unchain her. And so they unchained her, and he began to dance with her. That was Shlomo. And finally he got tired of singing and dancing, and he left. But all the guards and the prisoners were singing and dancing. And this was Shlomo. Wherever he went, he touched the lives of people. He made no discrimination between the enemy and us holy, pious people. So I don't know where to begin with this whole subject. It's a crazy subject, but that's what the human condition is about. Craziness, madness. It's like Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who lived in the middle part of the last century that just went by. He wrote something like, violence and war is natural. Martyrdom is not. Now what does that mean? Well, I'm going to spend the whole evening talking about none of that. Maybe just a little. What is martyrdom in the Jewish tradition? We'll explain to you what he meant by that. I mean, it's natural to go out and kill each other. Have you ever thought of that? I mean, we just can't get rid of it. It's part of nature. The lion, I mean, you see the Discovery Channel, right? The zebra's eating grass and the lion's chewing its butt out. This is typical. This is nature. Everything is trying to eat up everything. Everybody wants a piece of everybody else's action. Not here in this room, but I'm talking about the people who didn't show up tonight. You know? And I have a list of them in my pocket. Post outside a little later. There is something inherent in nature, you know, that seeks to swallow everything around it. In the Jewish mystical tradition, they explain this because a lot of the Kabbalists who talked about good and evil and tragedy lived in times when my people were being very heavily persecuted. And they were like searching so desperately for some way to explain evil in the world. And they came up with this sweet formula. It's called the divine light. See, we always think of the divine light as, oh, I want to bask in the divine light. Because the divine light is good. It's beautiful. And so the old Kabbalists, as far back as the 1st century during the Roman oppression, came up with this teaching by Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakona, 1st century ACDC. And he said, the divine light is no good because you can't see it. It blinds you, just as the darkness does. Neither too much light nor too much dark is good. What we strive for in life, he said, is a balance. Not to be too perfect, because that can lead to evil. Not to be too evil, because that could lead to evil too. So you see, what is evil? Evil is extremes. Extreme. One chocolate, as I've told you many times before, is good. A box of chocolates is evil. It's all chocolate. You know? So I read this book about purity, and I love purity because I'm a very holy man. I'm one of the holiest men in the world today. It's written up in Who's Who in holiness and humility. And the book is called Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler. See, so here's a man who wrote about purity. Here's a man who was obsessed by purity to the point where he purified his continent of people whom he thought were represented the opposite, the antithesis of purity. Right? So anything taken to the extreme becomes evil. The ancient rabbis taught that כל הברכים על האכזרי נעשה אכזרי לרחמנים. I'm just making up the Hebrew. It doesn't mean anything, really. It means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Which is Hebrew for one who is compassionate in a situation requiring sternness, firmness, would end up becoming cruel in a situation requiring compassion. And they give the example of our king, our first king that we ever had. We didn't have kings for a long time. You know, we were very tribal. Each tribe had its own chief and sub-chiefs and a couple of other sub-subs. And we had prophets and prophetesses, women and men, who were the judges of the people and the visionaries of the people. But then, at some point, we wanted to be like everybody else. And we came to Shmuel, the great prophet Shmuel, Samuel. And we said, Sam, you know, everybody else got a king. We want a king too. We want a king, we want a king. So Sam said, all right, you asked for it. This is going to be the beginning of the end for you guys. You were doing so well until now. You know, you have your ups and downs, but now it's going to be national ups and downs, lots of downs. You really want a king? We really want a king. First king that was anointed was a guy named Shaul, Saul, Shaul. Shaul was a very humble man. Why? He's described as hiding behind the barrels of Ballantine beer. Some say it was Miller, because he felt he was the smallest of the tribes, the tribe of Benjamin. What a humble man he was. Why, he didn't want to become the king like the Arthur story, you know. And finally, you know, he was made king and he didn't want it. Then he went to war. He was told to wipe out the Amalekites, who were always attacking the people. Wipe them out. I'll talk about wiping out. Don't worry. I'm not going to avoid the subject. He was told, okay, your first mission is to wipe out the Amalekites, who had been attacking the people since they came out of Egypt along the way. As it says in the book of Deuteronomy, they attacked the people from the rear, the women and the children and the elders and the people who were busy playing cards instead of walking fast. So Saul went to war, but he brought home booty, which was forbidden. We're supposed to bring home booty, not allowed to take from the enemy if you're going in a holy war. I'll talk about holy war. This was a holy war. If it's war, it ain't holy, I know. But that's what it was. In the Hebrew vernacular, it's called milchemet mitzvah, which means a war of instruction. You know, you were instructed by the divine that to go to war. I just heard God speak. Shh. Mm-hmm. No problem. Charge! But he spared the king. He spared the cattle and the cows. But the main point of the story is he spared the king of the Amalekites, Agag, because he was such a compassionate man. He could not bring himself to slay the king. By the way, they didn't kill back then. They slew. He could not bear kill the king. Why, this man was then dethroned. Samuel gets very upset and said, you're the first king, you got first job, finally get rid of the Amalekites, and you didn't do it. You didn't get rid of everybody. You spared their king. So Sammy grabs a sword and slays the king. Sammy the prophet has to do this dirty job. Now you would think, but Saul is such a compassionate man. He spared life. Couldn't bring himself to slay everybody. Oh, is that the real reason? Let's read on about Saul. Later on, the new guy that's been voted in as king by the prophet is the youngest son of Jesse James. His name is David, the son of Yishai. Yishai is Hebrew for Jesse. King James couldn't pronounce a lot of these names, so he rewrote them. So Jesse, the youngest son David, is anointed by Sammy to be the new king. Now Saul is still in power. You don't just kind of replace him. It's not David's time yet, but Saul knows David is going to be the new guy. He's already gone against the giant Goliath. You saw the movie with Richard Gere, so you know the whole story. Okay? So now you have chapter after chapter of Saul trying to get rid of David, because David's going to be the new king in his stead. Hey, what happened to humble Saul? What happened to that humble man who didn't want to be king, who wasn't worthy of it? Oh, it gets even better. There's a village, a Jewish village, of Kohanim, priests, the village of Nob. They harbor David for a while, feed him, clothe him, shower him, let him watch TV. And then he has to flee again because Saul is coming with his army against his own guy, David. Right? Saul is in such a zeal to get rid of this man who is going to be the next king in his stead, Saul, the humble man. And now what happens is, it's like the story of Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, the whole chapter after chapter chasing each other. Beep, 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 beep. Saul comes to the village of Nob, the Jewish village of Nob, his own people. And he finds out that they had harbored David. What does he do? He wipes them out. Compassion, huh? Mistaken compassion. Why couldn't he kill the king of the Amalekites? Because he was a king. His humility was not for real. So this is what the rabbis taught in the ancient times. They said, one who is compassionate in a situation requiring firmness will end up being cruel in a situation requiring compassion. The divine light, Nechunya ben Akonet said, seeks to swallow everything, make everything one with God. The divine light is so good that it empowers and makes possible evil. Because God is schizophrenic, like every parent in this room. Every parent in this room is a schizophrenic creature. I can say this because I'm a parent. Many times over, I don't know where these kids are anymore. The time I went on a date, there was another kid. It wasn't my fault. So I have grandchildren too. You want to see some pictures? So the parent, as a parent, you know, the parent wants to swallow up the child, make the child like itself. And the parent also at the same time wants to individuate the child. Allow the child to find his or her own power. I walk with my 7-year-old along the cliff where we live in New Mexico. Big ledge, big drop. She loves to climb rocks. And so for years, I have to walk with her in great trepidation, trying to hold on to her, you know, jacket without her knowing it. Dad, oh, sorry. I'm supposed to touch. You know, I want to like swallow her up completely and hold her so she can never find her power. And I know that I want her to find her power. So I'm walking there with heart attacks all day long. You know, and Dr. Richard Kozel in the village of Cuba is walking behind me with all kinds of things stuck in my heart. And we're all following this little kid. This is the schizophrenia of being a parent. On the one hand, wanting to take such care and hover all overshadow, and on the other hand, knowing that you got to step back a little or the kid will never become empowered. So there's the great divine light that seeks to make everything one with itself. God wishes to make everything one with the Godhead. Yes, come, swallow the earth. The earth swallow, right? And then there's a part of God that wants you to be so other that you can have a relationship on your own volition with God, whatever that is. So, we live in a world of paradox, where everything seeks to swallow everything up. You watch Discovery Channel, you see that all the time, you know. The Discovery Channel, everything is swallowing everything. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. You know, everybody's swallowing, everybody's busy eating at everybody else. And the human is really no different. We have that inclination. You know, today we go out and hunt tofu. But, you know, we're still hunting, we're still eating. Life is about everybody eating everybody. So we're busy eating, we're all cannibals. We love to eat each other up. But it's forbidden by American law. So we don't. But deep down, you know, we love to get a taste of some people. So instead we make love with them. You know, we get as far as we can. So they say, ouch, don't bite me. You know, but you know deep down what that was about, don't you? Just don't say anything. This is why in the festival of the autumn, in the autumn festival, we do this ritual that most Jews, even though they're doing it, don't understand where it's from. But that's how religion is. Every religion, everybody's doing. Why are you doing it? That's a tradition. So this is a very powerful mystical ritual. In the Kabbalah, it talks about it a lot. It's mentioned in the Torah, in the Holy Bible. It's about taking a palm branch that's not mature yet, so that its leaves are not opened yet. It's very shut. It's like looks like a Luke Skywalker lightsaber, you know? And that's exactly what it is. According to the Jewish mystical tradition, we shape this lightsaber, this constricted palm branch, as a prayer that the divine light be constricted for the year to come, just enough, so that there's enough light and enough darkness. So there's a balance between light and darkness that will enable us to walk through this world in a peaceful way, in a calm way. And sometimes the light is so overwhelming that its force gets so exaggeratingly misinterpreted by people who have already made choices toward the sinister. And then they fly planes into buildings. The worst possible scenarios happen. Or they commit genocide against the people. So now I will talk about all of this from the tradition from which I, the great me, came from. You know why I feel very great tonight? Because I was reading in the Talmud tonight. The Talmud is a collection of 700 years of oral tradition, Jewish tradition, where it says, "Chayav Adam lomar b'shvili nivra ha'olam." Every person should say, because of me alone was the entire universe worth creating. So, don't you mess with me. This world was made just because of me. Oh, that means that each one of you too, right? Wow, I'm really honored to have beings like you here. So many of you, each of you, for whom the world is worth creating. It's a great teaching. My tradition, the Jewish tradition, is filled with war and peace and love. There are all these teachings about peace. The prophets of my people talked about nothing but war will end one day. Right? Book of Isaiah in the very beginning. In the book of Jeremiah and Hosea and all the others. No nation shall lift up sword against nation. No one shall learn war any more. So many teachings like that. It's so beautiful. I will abolish the bow. The bow. And the sword and war from the land. It's in the book of Hosea. Not by might and not by force, but by my spirit. The book of Zechariah. And then you have that very famous one. What's that famous one? You know that famous one. A real long one. How's it go? Okay. Copied it down here so I can read it right. Oh well, it's not here. She got lost. So it doesn't apply. In the book of Isaiah and the book of Micah, because Micah, heard it from Isaiah. Micah came after Isaiah. It says, and they shall beat their swords into, this one, into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. But they shall sit every person under his vine, and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. For the mouth of the infinite mover of all the forces has spoken, that all the peoples walk each one in the name of its own God. We'll walk in the name of ours. A prophecy of tolerance and peace. Although, sometimes when I read this, I get really scared. They shall beat their swords into plowshares. I don't know. I think I'd rather be hit by a sword than a plowshare. The spirit of pruning hook, I'm not sure. I want to be attacked by a pruning hook. Rather take a spear any day. Go to the book of Malachi, chapter 2. Have we not all one and the same ancestor? Halo avachad kulanu. Has not one God created us? Why do we deal treacherously, every man against his brother, profaning the covenant of our ancestors? And it goes on and on and on. And in fact, King David, he wanted to build the first temple of our people. And then in the vision, God says to him, I'm sorry, David. I'm not saying anything about your architectural abilities, but you have too much blood on your hands. You've been to war too long. So you can't build my house. Your son, Solomon, Shlomo, will build my house because he hasn't been to war yet. See? That's how yucky war is and war was in the eyes of the ancients, of my people. And yet, we had a lot of wars. We have teaching like in the book of Genesis, in the very beginning in Genesis chapter 9, it says if one sheds blood, it is considered as if they've diminished the image of God. In the rabbinic teachings of ancient times, it says, one who sustains a single human being, it is as if they sustain the entire world. One who loses a single human being, murders a single human being, is as if they've destroyed an entire world. So you have all these teachings against war, against bloodshed. I'm going to build this way up. And, move away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. That's in the book of Psalms. May peace be always within your walls, tranquility within your homes. Shalom b'chelid, shalva b'armonosayit. Also in the book of Psalms. Behold, I'm going to bring her cure and healing. I'll heal them and reveal to them the abundance of peace and truth. How beautiful upon the mountains, Isaiah writes, are the feet of the one who brings reports of peace and news of hope. And you shall declare, yea to living. These are the words of David, by the way, before he goes to war. He shall declare, yea to living. May you be at peace. May your household be at peace. And may all that you have be at peace. V'amartem kol lechai v'ata shalom u'veis kol shalom v'chol asher lecha shalom. These are his words before he sets out to wipe out an enemy of his, who's an ally of Saul. But first he tries to make peace, which is in accordance with the laws of Moses. The laws of Moses, which I will discuss soon, the laws of war. One of the first things in the laws of war of the ancient Hebrews was you have to first give the people a chance. Give peace a chance. Right? Which John Lennon stole from our tradition. So David is like going overboard. He sends his messengers to Nabal because he's about to go wipe the guy out and his army. And he says, and declare to him, Kol lechai, yea to living. In other words, you want to stay alive, don't you, buddy? May you be at peace. May your household be at peace. And may all that you have be at peace. 3 times. Peace, peace, peace. The ancient rabbis taught, this teaches us that it's not just enough to call out for peace. You have to call out 3 times peace. Peace, peace, peace. Oh, you. Peace, 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 peace. Oh, I will stretch out peace like a river. It just goes on and on and on and on. Because I know the thoughts that I'm thinking about you, God says, in the book of Jeremiah. I know the thoughts that I'm thinking about you. Anochi yadati es hamachshavot asher ani choshev aleichem. You know what the thoughts are that I'm thinking about you? Thoughts of peace, not of evil, to gift to you a future and a hope. It's so beautiful. And it goes on. And then at the end of the book of Psalms, David, the great warrior, says, for the sake of my brothers and friends, I ask peace to you. Right? And who's the one that wrote those beautiful words? How beautiful it is, David writes at the end of his life. Nothing is more precious, he wrote. The great warrior with blood on his hands. Nothing is more precious than people just hanging out together. Shevet achim gam yachad, brothers just dwelling together in peace. So there's a big paradox going on here, because you have all these and so many more teachings in the traditions, in the ancient Jewish tradition, about peace and how important it is to seek peace. Bakeh shalom, desire and seek peace. V'rafehu, and chase after it, David writes. And yet we were always at war. So now I will talk to you about war. War is a good thing. I remember I was in the army. Well, I was one of those great infantrymen. I used to come out of the lake with bullet belts all around me and a bandana strapped around my forehead to cover up my tefillin marks. And so I would come out there with my rifle way up there and coming out of the water. In the army, they taught us to yell, kill, 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 during bayonet training. This was during the Vietnam War. I don't know if they still do that. Maybe now they do, maybe disarm, disarm, disarm. I didn't yell kill, kill, kill because I was a very pious yeshiva boy, very religious man, not as I am now. And instead I would just move my lips. Of course, that got 150 push-ups from me when everybody stopped yelling and I'm still going. Kill! Stop, 150. Of course, I didn't do them all at one time. You could also, do them in installments. Whenever I saw the lieutenant, I had to drop and give him 25, 30, 40. He kept the record of it. With interest. So it ended up to 3,960, which I'm still owing him. I just bumped into him. I was doing a teaching in Tallahassee, and I saw him in the street there, and I had to drop and give him a few more. There are two kinds of war in the Jewish tradition. There's milchemet reshut, milchemet mitzvah. Are you writing this down? Milchemet reshut is like, literally it means war of permission. And the other one is called milchemet mitzvah, which I mentioned before, more akin to like what people know as a holy war, which is a war of instruction. In other words, the instruction comes through the prophet, and the prophet says, we go to war now, come on. Everybody goes, schleps to war. And the war of permission, was more like you needed, you felt like you needed to go to war because, it's a man thing. Men need to go to war. And every now and then, women have their periods and men have to go to war. What's the big deal? Isn't that understandable? I don't understand why people have a trouble with that. Hi, honey, I'm going to war now. Can you give me my sword? Thanks. And a box of tampons? Thank you. So women bleed, we don't. So we have to go out and make it happen. Slay me, and I shall slay thee. You got a deal, my friend. We go to war. It's a man thing. We have to go to war. What's the matter with you? You don't understand that? No, we're living in the year 2001 in the great America, where we watch war on TV until it comes to our doorsteps and says, hello there. Are you mortal too? Are you part of this world, the paradox and contradiction of the great divine light that seeks to swallow everything? Good, but we're coming to swallow you now. Suddenly we are awakened to a reality we have never ever contemplated, except those of us who have been in war zones, actually. Not here in this country, of course. It is the tradition of the United States to always send the war over there. So you don't have to worry about it over here. Everything goes good over here except for the NASDAQ. That's everything everybody watches. How's the war going? I don't know. I haven't seen the NASDAQ rise or fall yet. When you watch TV and CNN and see what's happening on the stock exchange rather than the battlefield. See? But war. Oh, look at this. This is war in Hebrew. This is the same letters in Hebrew juxtaposed several times. War and also bread. Same word for war. Lochem. Lechem is bread. Because to make bread, what do you have to do? You got to go to war! This is the mystery of war. You can't make bread without going to war. Well, today we can go to Safeway or Albertsons because we're peaceniks. So we go to Albertsons and we buy bread. We go to bakeries, right? What's the name of that bakery?
Great Harvest.
Great Harvest, right. We go to Harvest bakeries, right? And the people in the bakery are at war all the time. Because what is war? What are they doing? Right? Can you just take wheat and eat it? No. You got to take the wheat and shove it. And you got to crunch it. And you got to move it and sift it. And you got to add things and eggs and yeast and water and make flour. It takes years and years to make a piece of bread. You got to go to war to make lechem. Lechem. The same word for bread in ancient Hebrew is the same word for war. Because war is not just glibly people fighting each other. War is wrestling through something very, very deep. War is bringing the kernels, well, not the army kernels, but bringing the seed, the kernel, the very core of something to fruition. There are many ways of doing that. You can just simply pick a fruit. You don't have to go to war. All right? You pick an apple and you eat it. You pick a plum and you eat it. There's no war. There are ways to bring things to fruition without war. But then there's this innate human desire to have to look for the worst possible way to bring things to fruition. And so we call that bread. Second word, when you juxtapose the word bread or war, you get melach, which means salt. 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 What does salt have to do with war? I don't know. You see, what is salt? In the 1st century BCE FG, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hanani was visiting Athens. And he sat with the wise men of Athens for a while. They would ask him riddles to determine the wisdom of the Jewish people. And he would ask them wisdom questions too, to determine their riddles. And so they asked him at one point, tell us, so great Jewish teacher, if salt spoils, with what does one preserve it? And he said, why, with the placenta of a mule. A mule is a sterile animal for those of you who didn't go to college. And so he said, they said to him, since when does a mule have a placenta? And he said, since when does salt spoil? So, salt is a very great power. Salt in itself is unspoilable and contains within it the power to make other things unspoilable. Salt preserves what it touches and gives flavor and meaning, and salt is in itself indestructible. It gives it meaning, though, only when you use it in moderation. If you use too much of it, it doesn't taste good, and it's not healthy. See, that's why we have low sodium potato chips now, and low sodium V8, and low sodium tuna fish, and low sodium baked beans. In the Hebrew scriptures, the relationship of God and the people is called Berit Melach, a covenant of salt. Because that's the most ideal relationship we need to strive toward with each other, is a covenant of salt. That in ourselves we need to be really strong and firm, indestructible by the other with whom we have a relationship. Our most beloved partners can easily destroy us. They can be the great divine light that seeks to swallow us up and recreate us in their image. So you have to be firm, you have to be soft. You got to remain the mystery that they fell in love with to begin with. I want to change you, honey. I fell in love with exactly who you were when I met you, and now I want to make you totally the way I want you to be so that I can hate you. And at the same time, be capable of giving flavor to the other. Too much flavor to the other, again, negates the other. And there's nobody in the relationship. It's just you, me, and my shadow. Next one is chalam, dream. War is dream. War is vision. I have a vision. I want to take over the world. Or, I have a vision of peace in the world. I need an army to make it happen. Let's gather together and go to war so we can have peace in the world. And get rid of all those hawks out there. Right? I mean, we see this. We see this. We see that there are extremes on both sides all the time. There are extremes in those who want war, and there are extremes in those who want peace, that they go and have big clashes and protests where they beat each other up. That happened recently. It was the funniest thing I ever saw on CNN in my life. I don't get CNN where I live. I get, which I watch a few hours a night. Then when I travel a lot, I get to go to a motel, you know, and I get to use real bathrooms, and I get to see like TV and news. And I didn't know Clinton was not president. Found that out. So, and Bush looks really young. So, dream, vision. Dreams can lead to war. Dreams have led to war. Dreams of my people have led to our war. Dreams of every people have led to war. And finally, you have machal. I will talk about salt. The salt is the main part of our teaching tonight, about the laws of war. It has to do with salt. It has to do with moderation. You know, you go to war a little bit. Don't overdo it. Machal means forgive. Forgiveness. War and forgiveness. You see, the teaching goes like this, basically. Within everything is its opposite. Within every curse is a blessing. Within every blessing is a curse. Within everything that is good, there's a little bit of evil. And within everything that is evil, there's a little bit of good. Like that country western song I used to hear over and over and over and over and over again when I lived for 11 years in the West by God, Virginia, from the way, way, way in the back country of Monongahela National Forest. And it's the only station they had, and the only song they ever played. And the only stanza I ever remember, which is this guy sings about his tough life, which is a country western song. And finally he leaves his family and he squanders on his money and drinks and everything. Finally he dies in the song, not in real life. He continues singing this. And some people are taking me literally. And then he goes comes to God. And he's very ashamed. Oh my God, I've lived such a terrible life. How can I face my God? And then God sings to him and says, come on in. You've done the best that you can do. There's a little bit of pride in every wrong. There's a little bit of me in you. Forgiveness. War and forgiveness. I mean, once you beat the guy up, you get a little compassion sometimes. We beat the hell out of Europe after World War II. And then what did we do? We went in there and built the whole place up so they could beat up other people. So I want to now tell you a little bit about salt. Oh, by the way, this isolated word is peace or wholeness, shalom or shalom, is wholeness or peace, which when you juxtapose you get mashal, which is like a parable. Peace is a parable. Parable. Give peace a chance. It needs a lot of chances. We have to understand what is peace. What does peace mean? What is peace? Not going to war? I don't know. I really don't know if that is what peace is. That's why the word in Hebrew for peace is the same word in Hebrew for whole, for wholeness. 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 When I'm feeling whole, then I feel at peace. This is why we have 7 names to the earth. Each name represents a different gift of the earth. And one of the gifts of the earth is Adamah. Names of the earth is Adamah, which literally means clay. We're named after that. The human being is named Adam, from Adamah. The Adam in the book of Genesis is not a man, only to those who read our Bible in English, which have been translated from the Latin, which had been translated from the Greek, which had been translated from the ancient Hebrew. But in the Hebrew, it doesn't say God spoke to Adam in the beginning, because there was no man named Adam. It says in the Hebrew, God spoke to the Adam, Ha-Adam. Male and female did God create them and called their name Adam. Kilokach mina Adamah, because they were taken from the Adamah, the earth. They were hermaphrodites. I want to go this way, I want to go this way, I want to go that way, I want to go that way. Finally, they split them up and split the atom. So here you have. That was pretty good. Einstein, a great biblical scholar. So, Adamah. What is the gift of this name of the earth called Adamah? Adamah literally means clay. The clay part of the earth, that part of the earth that you can use to mold and shape. The gift of Adamah is peace, wholeness. Wholeness means that you have control of your life. Wholeness means you have clay. Your life is clay in your putty in your hand. You can shape your life. It's like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who lived in the 1st century BC, great teacher, and he was living during a great Messianic fever. Everybody wanted a Messiah, instant Messiah. You know, just add water and stir kind of Messiah. Because the Romans were really coming down heavy on the Jews, and the Jews were rebelling, and they were getting crucified all over the place. And they couldn't take it no more. The rebellion after rebellion. So the Messianic fever among so many sects in Judaism just blew up into, everybody was a Messiah. You Messiah? I'm a Messiah. Oh, he's a Messiah too. You're a Messiah? You know, there's a hospital in Jerusalem full of Messiahs. You know, some people go to Israel and they get like so full of ecstatic, religious ecstasy, and they think they're the Messiah. And there's a hospital near where my sister lives. She's not one of them, but it's in a place called Har Naf. You know, had enough. The hospital there with people walking through the corridors proving their messiahship to everybody else in the corridor. You know, Isaiah there, Jeremiah, and they're all walking around mad and crazy. What a wonderful way to be. I wish I could join them. You know, get fed, you get listened to, and you get free Bibles. They sell Hebrew calendars, you know. So it was a great Messianic fever going on. And this is what he said. This is what he taught in that great Messianic fever time. He taught about clay, about peace, inner peace. He said, if you have a planting in your hand, you're in the middle of planting your garden. And they will tell you, behold, the Messiah has come. Finish the planting. Shalom, the Mashiach. And after that, you can go say, hello, Messiah. How you doing? You want a cup of tea? You had a long trip? See? So here comes the Messiah. It's like in the Buddhist tradition, they say, if you meet the Buddha on the road, shoot him or something like that, right? Kill him. That too. Okay. Kill him or shoot him, whichever comes first. And so this is like a similar teaching. Here you are planting. You have it. It says you have a planting in your hand, meaning you have your life by the hands. You have the clay. You're forming your life. You're shaping your life with your own power. You finally got it. And then they come to interrupt you with some guy who claims to be the Messiah who wants to hand it all to you in a platter, just when you're doing it by yourself. So John ben Zakkai says, say, I'll be there later at the big Messiah coming party. Right now, I have it in my hands. And that's what shalom means. Clay, clay, gives the people power, power to the people. Everybody should have the power to shape their life, which is very antithetical to war. Now let me tell you something about war, because I said I would, right? There were about 13 laws in ancient Israel concerning war. There were 13 of them. First one was wipe out. Wipe out. They stole all this stuff from us. It's really sad. It really pisses me off. Doesn't say credit Jewish people at the end. It really, just it's another evening I want to talk about. In the book of Deuteronomy and other places in the Torah is like the scriptures of Moses, Charlton Heston to some of you, and talks about that when you come into the land of your ancestors, because we lived there before, then we ended up in Egypt, we were slaves, then we come out of there, you saw the movie The Prince of Egypt. Now we're on our way back to our ancestral homeland, to the land of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the 12 brothers who sold their brother Joe up a creek, and later he made up with them because he liked peace too. So they're on their way back through the desert, and they're being given these instructions. They're saying, when you get to the land, there are many, many people living there. There are the Hittites, Jebusites, Girgashites, Canaanites, Amalekites, Dolomites, all kinds of mites living there. Millions of ites and mites are living there. Whatever, they're all living there. 7 of them are then named and said, 7 of the many other nations who are living there, you need to kick out. They don't belong there. Why don't they belong there? After all, it was a no man's land. There were many tribes living there all the time. They don't belong there, the Torah tells us, because of the way they were living, sacrificing their kids, like we do today. We send them to college. And all kinds of stuff you can read in books about the cultures of those times and how some of them worshipped their gods and goddesses by maiming people and killing people, capturing the enemy, sacrificing them, and so on and so forth. You were not allowed to follow in their ways, or the land will kick you out too, the people are told. In fact, when one of our own tribes behaved in the way described about these particular 7 nations, we went to war against our own tribe. It was not a parochial thing. It was more like a moral thing, that because of the way they lived, it wasn't about idolatry, because there were other nations living there that were worshiping many gods. What's the big deal? It was about disrespect for human life. So we're going to go out there and wipe them out. Then you have also the Amalekites. The Amalekites are mentioned in the book of Exodus, chapter 17. As soon as we were leaving Egypt, out of slavery, through the wilderness, we were suddenly attacked, for no reason at all, from the rear. Where the stragglers are, the people who are elders, the women who have children with them, and families. The stragglers are suddenly attacked from the rear by the Amalekites. So then we're told by Moses later on that in addition to the seven specifically named people that we were supposed to kick out of the land or wipe out completely are the Amalekites because of what they did. And the Amalekites continue throughout the stories in the Hebrew Scriptures warring against the Jews all the way up to Saul's time. That's why Saul's told to finally get rid of them once and for all. So the first law of war is wipe out 7 specifically named nations. The second one is wipe out the Amalekites, an 8th nation. The third is remember what the Amalekites did to you when you came out of Egypt. Don't forget it. The fourth one is extend peace first. And that's in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 20. You have a whole bunch of laws of war there. The second thing is make no treaties with Ammon and Moab, two nations that were inhospitable to you when you wandered through the wilderness. You just wanted to pass through their land and take a shortcut, so you would have to travel for 40 years to get across 2 feet. But they wouldn't let you through, and God said, do not make war with them, just go around. So because they were inhospitable, they wouldn't let you pass through. Don't make peace with them until a certain generation. Okay, and then it's very ironic. David, the great King David, who the great messianic concept stems from his dynasty, is a descendant of Ruth the Moabite. See, so the Moabite nation that we were supposed to have nothing to do with becomes the mother of the messianic lineage. Because God is a clown. I could have used my thumb. Why didn't you tell me? There it is. God, nobody tells me. I got to check my fly now. People don't tell me anything until after it's over. I once stood in front of 300 people in New York City giving a teaching. And later, some guy comes over and says, Rabbi, your fly is over. Thank you very much. You could have told me a little earlier, I wonder people were looking down. Not much to see anyway at my age. It's over. It's done. The 6th law is no destroying fruit trees in war. You go into war, you're not allowed to destroy trees. You can't just say, we need a tree for the war, for a battering ram. The law says, thou shalt not destroy the tree. That's in Deuteronomy also, chapter 20. The 7th law is shovels. You got to take a shovel with you. You can't just crap on the earth. You got to bury it. Hygiene. This is 3,300-year-old laws. Everybody else is crapping all over the place, but my people had shovels. We were a little more advanced. Deuteronomy chapter 23. Moses says, and don't forget the shovel! Oh yeah, I don't know if they're hiding me or not. And toilet pit! Oh, I forget it. The 8th law is one of my favorites. It's the exemption announcement. Now, mind you, this is 3,300 years old. This is like not the New Age, draft-free America. This is like 3,300 years old when war was like the thing to do. Like, what's your favorite hobby? War. What's yours? And look what they have to do now. Also in Deuteronomy chapter 20, it says, before they go to war, the officers, the authorities, the priests, the Levites have to go through the crowd of recruits. Hey, kill, kill, kill. And make the following announcement. Anyone here who just got married and has not lived with their new bride for at least a year? Exempt. A bunch of guys leave. Anybody here just built a house and has not lived in their new house for at least a year? Exempt. Thousands of soldiers leaving. Anybody here who just planted a vineyard has not eaten yet of the fruit of their labor? Exempt. Another 10,000 soldiers leave. Anybody here who is afraid? Exempt. A whole army leave. There's 2 or 3 guys left because they were talking during the announcement. Here's a sword. Well, where are we going? Where's the rest of them? Where are the rest of them? This is an amazing teaching. 3,300 years old. See, so this is like salt. Like, hey, take it easy. Take it easy. Don't go overboard. You got to go to war. We got to go to war. But you must never forget, in the zeal of war, the human factor here. We have young men here in the army who just got married and have not had a chance to be with their wife for at least a year before they get killed. And then there are people who just built a house, have not lived in their house. What if the plumbing goes wrong? There's nobody there to fix it. Well, in the vineyard, they just worked and labored in the earth. They finally have the fruit coming, and they can't eat it because they got to go to war. This is like so meticulous. It's so unconventional, especially 3,003. I mean, they're not even that compassionate today. Here in America, I couldn't get out of the Army because, I just planted a vineyard. I'd come there at the recruiting station, to the draft place and whatever. I see here you are declining. Yes, sir. I just planted a vineyard. What? You father mucker! Get over there right away! See? Unbelievable. So here you have this within war, you have this compassion for the individual. Within the zeal of the nation, there is not the forgetting. This is salt relationship. Kind of. And the 9th law is that the exemption must be at least for a year. And that during that year, these exempt people are not even allowed to be recruited for civil defense, like filling sandbags. Nothing. Everybody's at war and they're allowed to sit there on their deck with cocktails. Another year. You have another wife, yeah? That's why they had many wives back then. I got married again. The 10th law is no retreat. Once you go, you got to keep moving. Do not retreat. That's an actual law about war. You go into war, no retreat. Retreat! That's why when, they yelled retreat during the wars and stuff, all the Jewish soldiers kept going. Idiots. They should have just remembered that this wasn't a Jewish war. The suction power of these bottles are amazing. One time I couldn't get it off my mouth and I had to have a pickup truck. My friend John Moore came down and pulled it off with a chain. The 11th law is about the captive woman. This is an incredible law, 3,300 years old. That is not even observed in our modern day in warfare. If a soldier saw an enemy woman in the war and captured her among the prisoners, he was not allowed to have sex with her. If he wanted her, he had to bring her home. And there he had to let her spend 30 days. This is all in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 23. But 30 days he had to leave her alone so she could grieve her not being with her people anymore, being taken from her people. And then he must marry her and treat her like a regular old wife. He has to give her the food, the clothing, sexual satisfaction. These are the 3 laws mentioned in the book of Exodus that a man has to do for his wife. If a man wants to marry, he's obligated to sexually satisfy, to clothe, and to feed. Of course, in the Talmudic period, in the Rabbinic period, 2,000 years ago, they added about 7 more. You have to heal her, give her a credit card, buy her a new dress every 2 weeks, and take her seltzer water. The 12th law is, if you don't like her, after you had your wedding night, and you change your mind, you can't sell her. You can't sell her. And the 13th law is, you cannot make her your slave. See? Now, these are very unusual laws for that period, even for our period in some countries. If you capture somebody, if you capture a woman, you could not make her a slave, you could not sell her if you change your mind about having a relationship with her, and you have to give her 30 days to grieve the loss of her family, her separation from her culture, and so on and so forth. So these are basically the laws of war. And again, there were 2 kinds of wars. One was a war of permission, one was a war of mitzvah, the holy war, the jihad. But it really wasn't a jihad because, here's why. Because the so-called holy war was only in a specific time in history. In other words, it was specified, and this is also in the codes of the old early medieval code of Jewish law and in the Talmud and all the commentaries of Judaism, that the The holy war, the war of instruction from the divine, as they alleged that it was, only applied to the 7 specifically named nations that were living among other peoples in that land at that time, way, way back. It does not apply to any other people. Those 7 nations and the Amalekites, and that's it. There was no other, ever, another milchemet mitzvah, a war of instruction, or holy war, because holy wars was not against people who differed from you. Holy wars was against a specifically named people. And what were you supposed to do when you went to those holy wars, which is what Joshua was left with, Moses' disciple. So here's what Joshua had to do. The Talmud tells us the details of the laws of war as Joshua came into the country with the people. It says what? Here it is. Okay, this is a quote from the Talmud, from the Aramaic. 3 offers did Joshua send to the 7 nations, these 7 named people in the land of Israel before entering the land. 1, anyone who wishes to leave may leave. And the Talmud tells us elsewhere that the wars were waged in such a way that the people surrounded the enemy only on 3 sides, so that anybody who wanted to escape could escape. Number 2, anyone who wishes to make peace, come and negotiate peace. Getting back to the quote from the Talmud. Number 3, those preferring to make war, come and meet us in battle. Then the Talmud continues and says, the Girgashites believed Joshua and migrated to Africa. The Gibeonites made peace. And the others we went to war with. Did we wipe them out completely? Well, according to archaeologists, no. Hardly anything. According to the Hebrew scriptures itself, no. Because later on in the scriptures, the Amorites and the Hittites and the Jebusites are still in the land, in different parts. And under their influence, one of the tribes of Israel, the Benjaminites, begin to imitate their ways. And they cause the rape, death of a woman, the girlfriend of a Levite. She was the live-in friend, woman, companion of a Levite, because marriage was an option, not the only way to have sex in the Jewish tradition. That was imposed upon us by other religions. So there was a relationship called pilegesh, which meant like half-wife, like you had a committed relationship with somebody without marriage. You didn't need divorce. She can leave whenever she wants to. You can leave whenever you want to. Goodbye, good luck, no lawyers, no entanglements. It's all good. So the story in the book of Judges about a Levite who's traveling with his pilegesh, his woman, and they come to this village of the tribe of Benjamin in the north, where the Hittites are still, remnants of them are still living and practicing their ways. And to make a long story short, she is raped to death by the Benjaminites, by a bunch of hoods from the Benjaminite tribe. The Levite, finding her dead body, cuts her up in 12 pieces. Actually 11 pieces. And sends a piece to every leader of every tribe. And says, this is what happened. Every tribe is roused with anger and fury that one of their tribes could do such a thing to a woman, to a human being. Not cut her up, but to have raped her to death, which is said on the note that attached to each piece. And so the Israelites get together and they call to the Benjaminites, their brother tribe, and say, either you wipe out the village that perpetrated this evil, or we will come against you as an enemy too. See? So the idea of wiping out, the idea of going against that, really evil stuff, was not just against other people who didn't believe like us. It was against our own people too. Anybody. And that's what it says in the Torah too, that if you don't live in the land in a good way, the land will chase you out, will vomit you out. Literally is what it says. The land shall vomit you out, just like it vomited out of these other 7 peoples when you came in. 70,000 Israelites died in this great, humongous civil war back then over the death of a single woman. Because that's how great was the dignity and honor of a human being to the people. man or woman. This they did not want to happen anymore. And so the wipeout happened, because they were doing the ways of the people that they were not supposed to emulate, and that they were supposed to have wiped out to begin with. Now it's hard for us to understand, wiping out, men, women, children, just wipe out the whole damn thing. Everybody, get rid of them all. Very hard to understand. We're sitting here in 2001, we don't understand the ways that people thought. In a sense, there is a practicality there, if you think about it. There are little children today who are being taught to hate. They're being little children. I mean, in Vietnam, you went into a village and there were children and there were women, and if you didn't think that they were capable of killing you, you probably ended up a victim. There were children with bombs, there were children with grenades, there were women with rifles and guns. Nobody knew who the enemy was. We should not just glibly dismiss the fear and the legitimacy, not of genocide as much as what led the people to react that way. What were they afraid of? Well, they were afraid of that whoever they would spare would turn against them. You couldn't reform people. And at the same time, they were told, nevertheless, you got to give the people a chance before you go in. So there was a double jeopardy. On the one hand, if they don't just go in and wipe out, the people are going to come against them at some point. Their children will grow up hating them and kill them. And this has happened, and this does happen in war. And yet they're told, soft. They're told to moderate. They're told before you go in, even to those people, you must first call out 3 times. Give them a chance for peace. You must leave a section open for them to go away. So there were all these protocols of war that were very much a part of the religion that prevented, that on the one hand, made sure that you defended your own life in the process, and did not put your life at risk, and at the same time also made sure you did not forget the value of the life of the enemy. And this is why the teachings are then balanced by teachings like being pol vayvecho al tismach. When your enemy falls, do not rejoice. Teaching by King Solomon. On Passover, we celebrate our coming out of Egypt. Yay, we came out of Egypt. Yay, we're no longer slaves. Yay. And we sit there at the table drinking 4 cups of wine, and we get really high on that stuff. And the matzah gets stuck in our teeth. It's a whole tradition, right? Now, then at some point we talk about in the story of the Exodus the 10 plagues that befell Egypt. And what do? We spill the wine. We take wine out of the cup for every plague. Blood, frogs, the whole thing. And we don't sing all the hallelujahs that we sing for all the other festivals, praising God, singing songs. Why? Don't we sing all the praises of the hallelujahs from Psalms on Passover? So the ancient rabbis who instituted this custom said, because bin pol vayvecho al tismach, when your enemy falls, do not rejoice. Even when you have to go to war, or when you have to defend yourself, do not allow your victory to become a joy, a celebration. When the Israelites came to the other side of the Red Sea, they began to sing because they were so happy to be free and to be rescued from being oppressed and being chased after by the Egyptian army to be brought back to the land of the bondage at that time. The ancient rabbis tell us as follows. When the Israelites were singing, we're saved, we're rescued, thank you, the angels in the heavens began to sing too. And God silenced them and said, Maseh yadai tavu bayam, atem sharim? The works of my hand are drowning in the sea, and you are singing? See? So you have these teachings of balance, that in bo lahargacho hashkim lahargo. Somebody comes to kill you, you rise up before they have a chance and kill them first. And at the same time, don't be happy about it. Don't forget the value of the life of your enemy. That's why they weren't allowed to take booty in those wars against those 7 nations. One man took booty in the wars of Joshua and had the death penalty applied. You took booty? What does that mean, you took booty? You took booty, that means you did not value the life of your enemy. It means that you took advantage of the unfortunate killing that goes on in war for your own purpose, your own benefits. That was like a humongous sin to do that, to take advantage of war for your own pleasure, Take advantage of the holy war for that. And finally, not finally, what time? Oh, I got so much time. I'm going to open up for questions and comments. Okay? Let me just see what I have missed here. Right. Yeah, we weren't supposed to go against the Egyptians. We weren't supposed to go against the Edomites. We weren't supposed to go against the Moabites, the Ammonites. We were not allowed to go to war against Egypt. Why? They enslaved us. Yeah, but while you were slaves, you got fed, you got a house. There's a little sense of crazy appreciation there. And anybody from even among the 7 nations, anybody among the 7 nations that we were supposed to wipe out or chase out, who wanted to come to our side, was accepted fully. It says in the Talmud, in the Tractate of Sota, it says they were accepted wholeheartedly and became one of us. Either if they through conversion, if they chose to convert and become Jewish, or through the other option that we had all the way through our history, which is the Ger Tosha, which means the stranger who dwells amongst you. So there were 2 ways in which people who were not Jewish participated in our ancient society, the Israelite society. One way was to go through ritual conversion and be adopted by the people as a full-fledged Jewish person. And the other way was to say, I don't want to be Jewish, but I like hanging with you guys and gals. And they just lived with us, and they observed 7 laws. That's all they had to observe, 7 laws. They're called the 7 laws of Noah. Noah. Remember Noah and the flood? The 7 laws of Noah is no murder, no telemarketing, no worshiping anything other than the one God as the source of the powers. You are allowed to worship like things that are connected to the one God, as long as you maintain the one God. It's called shutfut, partnership. Then it had the other one was no stealing. The other one was you're not allowed to eat of a living animal, which means cruelty to animals. And the laws of cruelty to animals. No incest allowed. And what's the other one? You must have a system of justice in your village. Justice is very important. You got to have a justice system, judicial system. For example, when the Jews went to permitted war, what did that mean? It meant they had to first go before 71 elders. The 71 elders of all the tribes, representing all the tribes, would gather, and all 71 elders had to agree, yeah, we need to go to war. It wasn't just like one general or one president. And so there were 7 basic laws that they had to keep, and they could live with us. One law, Moses said, shall there be for you, Jewish people, and for the stranger who dwells amongst you. And that law is the most often repeated law in the entire 5 books of Moses. 36 times it appears about dealing kindly with a stranger who is not of Jewish, who lives amongst you. In the book of Leviticus, where it says, you shall love your fellow as yourself. Right? So just in case Jews would feel that, oh, that's applying to fellow Jews, Moses continues at the end of chapter 19, or in the middle of chapter 20, where it says, you shall love the stranger like yourself. Just in case you didn't get my point the first time. So it had nothing to do with people of other cultures being less, or we're like the supreme and you have to be like us. It never was like that. In fact, we intermarried freely, except the only prohibition of intermarriage in the Torah was intermarrying with any one of the 7 specifically named nations. It does not say you're not allowed to intermarry with anybody else. That came much later when we came into our us and them theology. After many centuries of oppression, you begin to go into an us and themism. So don't marry them. They're bad. So, and, okay, very good. Good. Cruelty to animals. You know, until the 19th century, the only people who had legislation against cruelty to animals was the Jewish tradition. We've had those laws since the time of Moses, 3,300 years ago. There are laws about plowing your ox with your donkey together, muzzling your ox while you work in the field so it can't eat. You know, all kinds of laws. Milking your cow on the Sabbath, even though you can't work your animal, but you can't eat the milk either. You can't use spurs on a horse unless they're spurs with soft, you know, like foam and stuff like that. You do it real gentle. So the balance of compassion, awareness for the quality of human life, awareness for the quality of animal life, and tree life. You can't knock down a tree in war, right? So throughout all the zeal of the human inclination and sometimes necessity for war was continuously and consistently balanced with just as many, well, far more teaching about the importance not only of not forgetting the quality of human life, even that of your enemy, but also, it also was balanced by the continuous visions of the prophets that one day nation shall not lift sword against nation. That one day all the swords shall be turned into what? Plowshares, and all the spears into pruning hooks, that everybody shall live in peace, and there shall be no more war anymore. These were the visions of the people that continue through the entire history of war out of necessity, or war out of religious zeal. And now I would like to open it up for questions. Yes?
Earlier when you were going through the words and translations, you were talking about a word, milah. Am I coming?
Melach, yeah.
Is it the same as the Brit Milah?
No.
Different.
Milah. Melach. Milah does not have a at the end. Milah has a at the end. No, they're not the same.
But if they're both, but they're a covenant with God.
No. Well, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. What did I say no for? I guess I was too much in the war zeal. So, yeah, you're right. Melach is salt, right? Milah is the word for like the circumcision ritual, which is the symbol in the flesh that we were told to do for the boys. That represented covenant, right? It was the unfolding of the foreskin, so that because covenant means that you're totally unfolded, no veils between you and the person with whom you're in relationship, no veils between you and God, especially not the place in you that causes war, which is sex. Now you know sex causes war. If people would have sex more, there wouldn't be any war. There'd be no time for it. Now, this is why King Solomon, didn't go to war. There was no war. And all the 40 years he reigned, there was not a single war. Israel was not at war. Why? He had 1,000 wives. He had no time for war. He had 300 wives and 600 half-wives. So when was there time for war? And when was there even an inclination toward war, Like he wants to go to war, he's a man. I got to go to war. Honey, oh, I forgot, yes. It's your turn now, yeah, I forgot. What number are you? 788. Did I do that before? No, yesterday. No time for war. The story of Solomon and the peace. That's why his name was Solomon. Shlomo, Shalem, peace. Man of peace. He was a man of peace because he was in bed all day. So who is the cause, the underlying cause of war is women. Women do not keep their men in bed long enough. They do not keep their men in bed long enough. And that's really, underlying it all is women. So it's all women's fault. Now you know the truth. Women, you need to keep your men in bed longer. The longer you keep them in bed, the more we have peace and quiet in the world. If you let them out too soon, war. War. Any other questions? Yes. Okay, also let me respond. I think I get the question. Okay, so it goes like this. Heschel was a great peace activist. He marched with Martin Luther King. He organized clergy against the war in Vietnam. He was always for that. And he wrote that war is within our nature. Now what does that mean? And martyrdom is not. And okay, let me explain his words in the context. Just because a man loves peace doesn't mean he will negate other realities of the opposite. The fact that warring, or the inclination toward roughness, sometimes translating into violence or force, doing things by force, is within not our nature, but in the nature of those who didn't come tonight, as I mentioned earlier. This being part of nature, the force thing, sometimes brute force, does not negate the inclination toward peace. The Jewish tradition, we don't live in a black and white world. We live in a world where we're wrestling. We're wrestling with our inclinations that are impulses in this world, in our bodies, in our emotions, in our minds, and at the same time our deep inner sense of rightness and wrongness. So there are many times when we feel something is really this is really right, and this is really wrong, and we're like standing between the two at the crossroads. And even though I know this is right and I know this is wrong, because of whatever it is, I'm going to go by whim and throw all caution to the wind, and I will take the wrongness. And that's what happens with the Cain and Abel story. If you remember, Cain is upset and jealous about his brother, that his brother's offering was accepted and his offering was not. And then God speaks to Cain in the story and says, the impulse, not which one, good or bad, because there is no good or bad, until you make the choice. The impulse, the drive, the passion is waiting at your door. And you can either open up this door and get the tiger jumping out at you, open up the other door and walk out into the Grand Canyon. The choice is yours. And he chooses the other. So it's sort of like the Talmud says, it's a really cute teaching. It goes like this. Jews are not supposed to eat pork. I know there are Jews here that do eat pork. We know who you are, we know where you live. But and we're not supposed to wear clothing that have wool and linen mixed together, and we're not supposed to, engage in certain, sexual relationships like with other people's wives. So we have like these laws. Now here, listen to the rabbinic teaching. It goes like this. This is like an 1800-year-old teaching. And it goes, Al Yomar Yehudi. A Jew should never say it's against my nature to eat pork. It's against my nature to wear wool and linen. It's against my nature to have an affair with my brother's wife or my friend's husband or whatever. It's within my rather a Jew have to wet my tongue here. Rather. The Jew should say, Ela Yomar Yehudi, the Jew should say, Efshi b'chazira. It is within my nature to eat pork. I have it within my nature to eat pork. Maybe I've been programmed not to, the way I grew up. No pork, no camel, no pork, no bald eagles, Chicken, and potato cookle. That's it. Finished. No pork, right? But it don't mean that it's not within my nature. Within my nature, it is. When I'm driving through the roads, and I smell that stuff coming out of them non-Jewish restaurants, all those non-Jewish people eating and having a good time, while I, the little Jew, is starving to death on the highway. Why, I just take off my Jewish badge And I head in there, and I say, hello there, I want a little pork, please, with a little apple in my mouth. Have a little fruit salad with it, you know what I mean? You know, so there's a dance that we do, that Heschel is doing, that I am doing, that you're doing, that we're all doing to some degree. We could have beliefs and ideals of peace and nonviolence, but that doesn't mean that there's no struggle to have that happen. Maybe I don't have the struggle, maybe you don't have the struggle, maybe all of us here in this room only can think of peace and nonviolence and do not have it within our programming or our choices that we've made in life that have brought us to a place where we now know this is all we want is right here and forget all that crap over there. Nevertheless, we're part of humanity. We're part of the other human beings in the world who are struggling.
You haven't dealt with the other half of Heschel's kind
Martyrdom. Exactly, that's what I wanted to get to. Thank you. So what is martyrdom in the Jewish tradition? In martyrdom, the law about martyrdom in ancient Judaism goes like this. You're not allowed to kill yourself, and you're not allowed to give your life up for anything except three. The three things are as follows. If somebody comes, anything you feel like it, that's one. No, I'm just kidding. The three are as follows. They come to you and they hold a knife to your throat and they say, worship this idol, this God. So you don't have to give your life. You may worship the idol, but you're allowed to give your life because it's al kiddush Hashem, sanctifying the name of God. So you're doing it for God, but it's a personal thing. You're not going out to kill anybody and to surrender your life for that. The second thing is adultery or incest. So let's say somebody holds a knife to you and says, "Okay, I want you to do it, you know, with this woman with whom you're not allowed to do it with, like your own child or someone else's wife." So you're not allowed to. You're allowed to give your life rather than do it. Now, what happens is the only one that you have to give your life for and cannot, where it's not just an option if you want to. So in other words, those first two, idolatry and adultery, are situations where I am allowed to become a martyr. And the only situation where I should become a martyr is murder. Murder. See, so if somebody holds a knife to me and says, "Okay, murder that person," I'm not allowed to save my own life. Because who's to say whose blood is richer than whose? Those are the only places. Now, throughout our history, we have gone beyond that. We have allowed our lives to be taken because they threatened us if you keep the Sabbath, we're going to kill you. If you observe Judaism, we're going to slaughter you. And so we chose to observe Judaism anyway and get slaughtered. In other words, we chose throughout the centuries, under the persecution in Europe especially, hundreds of thousands of us went to our deaths rather than give up our religion. So there are times, that's called martial law martyrdom. These are exceptions. You're allowed to give your life. You don't have to give your life up, but you're allowed to give your life up if the religion, the way of the people, is being threatened. And so for hundreds of years, hundreds of thousands, this is all documented in Jewish history books, year after year after year, in every place in Europe, we were being threatened with by the Inquisition, and even before the Inquisition, and then expelled, or tortured, or killed, burned at the stake. So many of us were burned at the stake. We chose that voluntarily rather than give up our religion. In the 2nd century, in the time of Rabbi Akiva, this was during the Hadrianic persecutions of the Jews after the failed rebellion against Rome. So Hadrian said, "I know how to get the Jews once and for all and quit all the rebellion, get rid of the rabbis." Because they're teaching this religion that talks about autonomy and the quality of life and the equality of people. So the rabbi, he ordered, rabbis are not permitted to teach anymore. Do not teach the people on the penalty of death. The rabbis taught anyway, and then they were killed. Akiva was one of them. So when Akiva was put into the cell, waiting for his execution, Papas ben Yehuda was in the cell too. He was arrested for some tax evasion thing. And Papas ben Yehuda said to Akiva, Master, why are you here? Why didn't you just obey the edict and save your life? And Akiva gave the following analogy, which helped to explain the martyrdom of the Jewish people throughout history. He killed rather than convert. It goes like this. Akiva said he was known for his fox fables. And he said, once upon a time there was a fox who was walking along the bank of the river and noticed a school of fish swimming frantically to and fro. Said the fox to the fish, why swimmest thou to and fro it? Saith the fish to the fox, because the fishermen and women, trying to be correct here, the fisher people are coming with their nets. So we have to swim frantically to avoid them. And the fox said to the fish, why don't you just come ashore? You'll be safer here. They won't come after here. And the fish said, we thought you were the wisest of the animals. Now we see how you are the foolish one. Because at least here we can survive, or some of us can survive. And we can perpetuate, and we can remain as long as we swim frantically in the water, which is our world. But if we leave and come ashore to where you are, we will flounder and flap around and die for sure. And so Akiva said to Papas ben Yehuda, you know, sure I can save my life and not teach the people anymore. You know, what's that going to do to us? That is death. If you're not who you really are, that's worse than death. And so he gave his life. So martyrdom has to do with giving your life up for what you believe that doesn't hurt anybody else. It's on the contrary. The martyrdom that you were allowed to do was instead of hurting somebody else. Yes?
What religiously were they doing in Masada? What were they upset they were doing?
They committed suicide there because they didn't want to be captured by the Romans.
That doesn't sound very religious. What's the religious side of that?
The religious side of that was because if you were captured by the Romans, your women would be sent into the brothels and you would become slaves. And so they didn't want to become slaves. So that's kind of a religious thing. You want to be free. And they didn't want their women and children being taken captive by the Romans and led to the practices of the Roman culture. So in a sense, you know, it had a little bit of a religious connotation. It's pretty controversial, Masada, because the Masada thing was a sect of people, a group of people who were known as the Barbarianim. They came from the Zealots, the sect of the Zealots, who incited a lot of the Roman problem because they wanted to incite their people, the Jews, to fight against the Romans and kick them out. So the Zealots took things a little bit too far. They burned storage houses in Jerusalem so that people would be forced to fight against the siege of Rome. And then the doors opened up and they got slaughtered en masse. And then a lot of them fled to the hills, ended up in Masada, where they kept the Romans away for quite a long time until they were overcome. But there, it wasn't so much a religious thing, it was more of a human dignity thing. I'd rather die than be captured by the enemy. I'd rather die than be captured by this particular enemy because I know what's going to happen to me. I'm going to be crucified because I'm a rebel. That's what they did to the rebels. They crucified them. Josephus writes that there were not enough trees in the hills of Judea to put up crucifixes for the number of Jewish rebels that were executed at that period. So it was a little bit religious, a little bit political. You know, I can't really say it was totally religious. There was a lot of politics in there as well. Yes?
So the commandment, thou shalt not kill, given, you know, right to Moses, is more of a something to look up to rather than the reality of our own humanity?
No, the fact is we don't have a commandment, thou shalt not kill.
Really?
It doesn't appear in our tradition at all. That's That's somebody else's translation. The word in the Hebrew is tirtzach, lo tirtzach, which means you shall not murder. Kill means is hariga, lo taharot, if you don't kill. Lo tirtzach means thou shalt not murder. The tzicha means murder, not kill. Go out and kill, folks. Killing is important. You got to get out there and kill. I want you all to get up there and kill. You know, grab this microphone and use it. Somebody comes to hurt you, don't let them, because you have a responsibility for your life. It doesn't mean that somebody comes at you and spits in your face, you got to kill them. You know, there are laws like that too in the Talmud. It doesn't just say somebody attacks you, you're supposed to kill them. It says somebody who wants to kill you, you know, they come at you with a gun, then you kill them first, not murder. But if somebody comes to steal something from you, not to kill you, unless they have it's armed robbery, then you could be liable for murder. Yes, somebody had a question? Yeah.
You were describing war as a paradox and a contradiction. And I look at the situation now, I don't see the paradox and contradiction. I see hypocrisy and I see hubris.
Mm-hmm.
And my human response to that is anger. And that's where I see a contradiction
Well, yeah.
and a desire for peace that wants to arouse to anger. Can you provide some insights on how that can be used in a beneficial manner?
Yes, everything can be used in a beneficial manner. There's not a single emotion, sense that we have that isn't used, that we cannot use for a good purpose. Hate, I hate bad stuff. Love, I love good stuff. Jealousy, I'm jealous for my way of being in the world. I love it. I'll die for it. Jealousy. Anger. Yeah, I got to be incensed. This is why the prophets spoke angrily. You know, these were nice guys who loved peace. You know, they were the peaceniks. They were hippies, walking around with sandals and long hair and long beard and haven't showered in months, you know. And they were, I'm not saying that's what hippies do, that's what I do. I have not a lot of water in New Mexico, you know. That's why I travel around and teach. That's why I became a rabbi, so I could travel and teach and get a shower. You know, in New Mexico, you know, I catch a little bit of the drizzle that come down there. No, it's not that bad. I have a well, 6 gallons a minute. So when they say, "Oh, you know, you bastards, you know," they use really harsh language in the Tanakh. Moses called the people Shimunu Hamorim. Listen to me, you infidels, you rebels, you. And then Isaiah said, "Your prayers like filthy rags. What good are your vain oblations, your sacrifices, and all that when you don't take care of the widow, you don't take care of the poor?" That's what God wants. Not ritual observances, right? The prophets are yelling and screaming at the people because they're angry. And anger is what? Anger, a good anger, is an anger that comes out of concern. I care, that's why I'm angry. See, they're expressing anger out of concern, not out of hate. I'm angry because I hate you. It's angry because I love you and I care about you and you're not listening to me and you're getting it all wrong. So anger is a good thing. You should be angry at things like this that are going on in the world. You should be angry because if your belief is that the war is hypocritical, you should be angry at hypocrisy. Because if we don't get angry at something we feel is hypocritical, then we only feed it. Now, if on the other hand you don't feel it's hypocritical, and therefore you're not angry about it, you're not a bad guy. You know, everybody's entitled to how they perceive it, but we are asked to find our truth in our decisions, in our choices in life. You know, if this really feels wrong to me, I should be angry about it. I should feel my emotions, my pathos about it. It's sort of like in the in the ancient laws of the Sanhedrin, the supreme rabbinic court, which used to be in Jerusalem until the 23 A.D., and then the rabbis moved it because of the corruption of the temple. And then the Sadducees took it over and kept it going in the temple. So in the ancient rabbinic Sanhedrin, you had up to 71 elders. who would convene to rule on a national issue. Whatever they ruled was law. Now, here comes the rabbinic teaching of the time. What if you're sitting there in the discussion and you hear them making their ruling and you disagree with them? Your heart, your truth place, you really feel that what they're saying is not right. Their ruling is not right. They want to go to war, you feel that's not right. There's something about this reason and rationale for going to war that doesn't feel right to me, you say. And you don't say anything. So the law is you have to bring a sin offering at the temple. See? That's how strong it was that if you had something to say and didn't say it, because what you could have said might have changed everything. Maybe you could have brought a point up that the elders didn't think about. They said, oh, he's right. Of course we shouldn't go to war now. We'll go on Tuesday instead. Right? So important is it for us to be true to our voice. Our voice counts. Our feelings do count. They're legitimate. And we should feel the emotions that come with them, because those emotions are what protect us from becoming complacent. So anger is very good if it's anger at the right thing. If it's anger that comes from your truth place. Not because of somebody else or the way they look, or the way they think, or their political opinions, but because you really feel angry within yourself, your truth place.
You spoke of being a parent.
Yes.
My two children are in complete contradiction of each other. Maybe not contradiction. My daughter Ruth is in a state of intolerance at the ignorance that where she's going to school, the way they're trying to teach her the history that she already has known, but afraid to raise that hand and say, you're incorrect in your teaching. Whereas my son Daniel wants to dance and sing and not, but I think out of fear. So when you're discussing this with your children in a very simple manner, could you simplify this for these two children? Because we haven't spoken of children who are, we know who they are. They're the most important. So what is your best guidance for their explanation?
About all this.
Because of what I said they stated to me personally.
Well, the wise King Solomon, who was in bed all the time, and therefore knew no war, also taught the following. He said, Chanoch hana'ar al pi darko, which means educate the child in accordance with their way. Every child is very different. To teach a child any of this stuff, you really have to know the child, and you're knowing that your children are different from each other in the way they perceive the world, therefore the way they receive the information, and therefore you have to give the information in that very different way. So if your daughter Ruth, who does, is disagreeing with the way the history, the information is coming to her because of she doesn't believe that that's how it is, or
Well, she's just angry. Maybe the media, the teaching at her school is out of ignorance. They're doing a quick explanation for them, so they can have an understanding.
So
is it safe within the household for her to speak against what she's hearing?
it's not safe in the school.
And yet, at the same time, she didn't dare raise her hand.
Right.
Is
So,
that,
yeah. So, I mean, what happens in the school, whether the kid reacts there or not, is not as important at that age, because, they're young and they're vulnerable. But you find out what they're really feeling at home. And so, to little Ruth, there's not much you have to tell her, because she knows.
No.
She knows. And so to overtell would be overkill. It would be more important in the case of little Ruthie to listen to her and acknowledge her, because that's exactly what she's not getting at school, and that's not allowing her to speak. And by doing that, you will raise her voice so that when she's 19 and 20 and 30, she's going to be out there with big placards, you know. And the boy, the son, what's his name?
Daniel.
Daniel. So Daniel, he likes to dance in the lion's den.
Well, it's out of fear, I think.
You think it's out of fear?
He doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for Daniel, it would be good to wait a little while, because if the child feels that they're not ready to deal with something, it's really important to honor that and kind of broach the subject around them rather than directly at them, to give them the permission and ease to, when they're ready, to come out and speak about it. So like you can speak about it to your daughter in front of you, is a way, or speak it to the man in front of the child, in any way that's not direct, because it's too raw, if that's the way he's reacting. But to honor that pace that the son has is very important. When they're ready, they will begin to take it in, and it may need to be talked about or not, but they need to be left alone until they're ready. Yes, we have to start winding down. They're giving us the key. No, they're not giving us the key. Go on. This is important stuff. So some people need to leave. You know, don't worry about it. Leave. Yes.
How are your parents?
Great.
You didn't tell the story today. So just
What?
curious how your parents are.
My parents? My parents are 1,000,000 years old. They live in New Jersey. And my father, who's 82 years old, refuses to retire and still goes to Manhattan every morning on this bus that takes him to Manhattan. And so the morning of the 11th, my father got up to take the bus to get to Manhattan when my mother got up too, which was unusual because she usually gets up a little later. And he saw her getting up and he said, "Oh, you're getting up, let me make you some breakfast." And she said, no, you're going to miss your bus. So he said, "So I'll take the later bus, no big deal." So he made her breakfast. He took the later bus, which was then turned away, and never made it to Manhattan. That's it. That's my parents. They're also nice people, you know. My father's long beard, really funny. My mother's funny. They're funnier than I am.
Did he go in on the 12th?
No. He didn't go in for a while. My mother was very happy. Some people are suspecting that she has something to do with it. So I'd like to sing for you, chant to you a blessing for renewal of your spirits, renewal of our spirits, to bring to us a sense of joy, a sense of peace, a sense of good, a sense of blessing, a sense of hope. This is a very ancient prayer. And I'll sing it to you in Hebrew. That's the only way I know how to sing it. So take it in as a blessing from my heart to you.
Yeshua's